Has it gone live?
Yeah, you're live.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. Just a quick warning, we're doing this live. There will be a recording sent out to everybody afterwards. We've had that question quite a lot. So if you miss anything, don't worry, it will go out. I think we're sending out the email blast at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We've got a Q&A panel on the right, I believe. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to send them through. And we've got quite a bunch that we've already received from us, from everybody that sent them through. So we will be kind of going over those first. And Alex asked me to let you know that some of them are really specific and relate to your individual circumstances. And so in those cases, Simply VAT are going to reach out to those people directly if we don't cover them, because it might be a bit difficult to do all of those at once. So a quick overview of what we're going to do. We're going to have some introductions from myself and Alex. Alex is then going to go over an overview of all of these exciting EU VAT changes that are coming. We'll then go over a live Q&A, and then we'll say goodbye. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Joseph Cox. I'm the managing partner and founder of Ecommerce Accountants, and I'm joined today with Alex Wyatt, who is one of the very first employees at Simply VAT, which is an accountancy practice that specializes in EU VAT. So, Alex, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's quite a pleasure, and it's great to be working with you guys. So I will add up my slides here, and yeah, let's get started. So just to give you everyone a bit of an overview, so my name is Alex Wyatt. I work at simplyvat.com, and yeah, like Joe said, that we specialize in international VAT for e-commerce businesses. So we work quite closely with these guys at Ecommerce Accountants so that we can make sure that not only is your UK side covered, but also any international taxes are also covered. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat and I'll be able to answer at the end. So let's get started. So there is a whole EU VAT reform coming, which is quite exciting. And I wanted to give a bit of a background as to why these changes are coming, just to put things into perspective for everyone. So the VAT rules are currently quite outdated due to the rise of e-commerce and online marketplaces. These VAT rules across the EU were established many, many years ago when e-commerce really wasn't a thing. So it's also following a global trend of modernizing tax rules for e-commerce businesses and marketplaces. So you will see it happening over in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, New Zealand. You'll see a whole bunch of similar changes happening, even here in the UK. As of the 1st of January, just after Brexit, there was a bunch of new rules, so that you'll see that there's quite a lot of similarities. So these new rules are really here to kind of simplify VAT compliance, and it might not sound simple the first time you hear it, but hopefully once you start seeing it in practice, it will be simplifying VAT for all businesses. And it is really, like I said, trying to modernize the rules and make it more fit for purpose for this day and age. And the end goal is really providing more transparency for customers across the EU, making sure that they know exactly what VAT they're paying at checkout. There's no surprise fees coming when they're trying to import goods into the EU. And also, they are really trying to make a fair environment for taxation across the EU. So for EU and non-EU businesses alike, competing on the same equal footing. And I'll go into a little bit more detail and specifics around some loopholes that were in place that are going to be removed. So I really just wanted to touch off, first of all, B2B transactions are not going to be touched under these new rules coming into effect from the 1st of July. So if you are only selling B2B, or if some of your transactions are B2B transactions, there will be no changes for those B2B transactions under these new rules. So just keep that in mind. And there are going to be different rules depending on where the goods are coming from as well, to these standard rules. So if you're importing your goods into the EU, are you the importer of record? You may have a VAT liability if you are acting as the importer of record for these B2B transactions. And again, if you're fulfilling goods from the EU, you still might have a VAT liability. So just keep that in mind for any of your B2B transactions, that you still have to follow current rules, but make sure that you're up to date on the current rules as well. So moving into what are the changes. So I'm going to give a quick overview, and then we're going to deep dive into each of these points on what the changes are. So first of all, we have the abolishment of the existing distance selling thresholds across the whole of the EU. And these are some of my favorite rules that are going to be disappearing. So I'll touch upon this in a moment. The general rule is VAT is going to be due where the customers are located for all B2C supplies. So that's going to be quite a big change. There's going to be an introduction of a single EU-wide threshold of 10,000 euros, but there's going to be a big caveat for this, so keep that in mind. There's going to be the extension of the mini one-stop shop, the MOS scheme, into the one-stop shop, the OSS scheme. And there's going to be new rules around marketplaces and platforms becoming deemed suppliers for specific transactions sold on their marketplace. So keep this in mind as well, that these specific transactions might be covered. And there's also going to be an introduction of the import one-stop shop, which I will refer to that as the IOS scheme. And again, I'll go into detail of all of these in a moment. So starting off with the distance selling threshold. So the distance selling thresholds, for those of you who aren't aware of them already, it's where you are holding your stock in an EU country, selling cross-border to private individuals in any other EU country up until set thresholds are met within a calendar year. Once those set thresholds are met, you'd have to VAT register in the inbound country and then start to declare the local VAT where the end customer is based. So up until that point, you'd be charging the sale departure country's VAT rate. So this really did help a lot of small businesses start trading cross-border. You were holding stock in one EU country, selling to another, but only needing one VAT registration. So these rules are actually going to be abolished as of the 1st of July. Now, if you are holding stock in an EU country at the moment and you're utilizing these distance selling thresholds, you still need to monitor the thresholds up until the 30th of June. So if you exceed a distance selling threshold between now and the 30th of June, you will still need to comply in that local EU country. So keep that in mind. Then we talk about the 10,000 euro threshold that's going to be introduced. And this 10,000 euro threshold is only going to be there for EU-based businesses. So I imagine it's not going to cover a lot of your businesses that are potentially here just in the UK. So keep that in mind, that this 10,000 euro threshold is only for the distance sales of physical goods going cross-border within the EU for EU-based businesses with a single country of establishment and that are only selling goods from one EU member state. So if that 10,000 euros does not apply to you, what that means is you are going to have to start to charge the local rate of VAT where your end customer is located on your first transaction post July 1st of this year. So you need to make sure that you have the systems set up in place to make sure that you're charging the local rate of VAT depending on where your end customers are located. Going into your imported goods. So I mentioned earlier upon why they're changing these rules. It's about the lack of equal playing field for EU and non-EU businesses. So there's a specific relief threshold called the low value consignment relief, and that is where you can sell and ship your goods into the EU at the moment up to 22 euros of consignment value without having to charge any any import VAT or any duties. So, so this was a huge kind of benefit, kind of sometimes a loophole for some businesses that were importing goods into the EU, maybe under declaring their goods or moving their goods in without VAT. And this did really create an unequal playing field for those EU businesses that were selling those low value goods that had to charge VAT on these transactions. So what they're doing, what the EU is doing, is completely abolishing the low value consignment relief threshold as of the 1st of July. So if your business benefits from this low value consignment relief, please make sure that you are ready for the changes that are coming up from the 1st of July. VAT is going to be due on all imported goods into the EU, and you're going to have to charge the local rate of VAT where your customers are based. So moving into the new simplifications that are coming into place to help you with these kind of changes that are happening. So first of all, we have the union one-stop shop, we have the non-union one-stop shop, the import one-stop shop, and then there's going to be new rules for marketplaces and the special arrangements for postal operators. So looking at each of these here, we have the Union One-Stop Shop. The Union One-Stop Shop is going to be covering specific transactions, and it's going to be two types of transactions. So the first one is any intra-EU distant sale of goods going directly to private individuals. So this is where your goods are already located in an EU country, going cross-border to a private individual in another EU country. You would be able to use the Union OSS scheme to declare these transactions. The second type of transaction covered under the Union OSS scheme is if you are an EU-based business and you're selling specific services cross-border to private individuals. You would also declare these transactions on the Union OSS scheme. We have the non-union OSS scheme, which is going to be really the extension of that MOS scheme that I mentioned before. And it's just covering B2C services by non-EU businesses. So if you're selling any sort of services into the EU to private individuals, make sure that you are getting registered on the non-union OSS. If you already have a MOS registration in place, then you don't need to worry about registering for the non-union OSS. It will automatically transfer over for you into the non-union OSS scheme. And lastly, we have the import one-stop shop scheme. So this is going to benefit any distant sellers or drop shippers selling goods into the EU directly to private individuals with a consignment value of up to 150 euros. And that is set at 150 euros because it is also the duty relief threshold as well. So anything below 150 euros does not have any duties on it and will be able to go under the import one-stop shop scheme. For EU businesses, you'd want to register for OSS and IOSS in the country where you're established. And for non-EU businesses, you would like to register for the Union OSS scheme in the country where you're holding your inventory. So if you're using, say, a pan-EU scheme, you can choose which country you'd like to register in, whether that's Germany, France, Italy, Spain, etc. And then if you were looking to register under the non-union OSS scheme, you can register where you'd like. And if you are a non-EU businesses wanting to register under the import one-stop shop scheme, you're going to need to register through an EU intermediary in order to use the scheme. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a few slides. So starting with the Union OSS, I want to make it really clear that this is an optional scheme to report VAT due on the cross-border intra-EU B2C supplies of goods. And it's all going to go through a single registration. So instead, if you were one of those businesses that were crossing over multiple different distance selling thresholds within a calendar year, you had 11 registrations, you could now really simplify this onto all of your cross-border transactions onto this single Union OSS registration. It's important to note that it's not a single EU-wide portal. Each individual member state will have their own online portals that you can register directly to. Why I mentioned that it was an optional scheme is because the alternative is that you can register in each and every country where your customers are based. So you have to keep that in mind, that you can either register in every single country or you can use the Union OSS scheme. So the Union OSS scheme really looks like quite a useful simplification to a lot of businesses. The other thing that I'd want to note to everyone that might be using the Union OSS scheme is that it is only for the cross-border B2C sales only. So if you are making any domestic sales, so say you're holding stock in France and selling to French customers, that would all go on your local French return. So you still need that local VAT registration in place where you're holding your stock. And the Union OSS scheme will then cover all of your cross-border transactions to the other EU member states. So if you're making sales to German customers, Italian customers, so on, that would all be covered under the Union OSS. And the sales locally would be going under the domestic VAT return. So looking at how this works in practice. So what we're going to do is you're going to get VAT OSS registered. Again, if you're established in the EU, in an EU country, or in the EU country where you're established, and if you're non-EU based, then in a country where you're holding stock. So you get your registration under the Union OSS scheme. Once you're registered, you are going to want to charge the local rate of VAT where your customers are based. So if you're selling through your own website, you want to make sure that you have the facility to charge the local rate of VAT where your end customers are based. And this can be done through at checkout, for example. You will be charging these local rates of VAT to the point of sale, and then you're going to be collecting all of that and then paying that on a single quarterly VAT OSS return and a single payment to the member state of identification. So you're making a single return, quarterly return, and a single payment on a quarterly basis to the member state where you're registered. And then what's going to happen is that member state is going to then distribute the VAT that you've collected from all of the other EU countries. They're going to distribute that to the other tax authorities on your behalf. So it really is that simplification that you only really have to be working under one country, one payment. It's going to be a lot easier. One thing that you should note is that you have to keep your records for a period of 10 years in case of audit. So any of your transactions and transactional details, you want to keep a hold of all of that information just in case you do get audited by a specific tax authority. So looking at the advantages of using the Union OSS scheme. So again, it's an alternative to registering in each and every member state where your customers are located. So that could mean registering in up to 27 different member states. So that's a huge cost to compliance to a business, and a huge bunch of admin as well, which I'm sure a lot of businesses don't want to do. Also, it's all going through that single interface with a single payment, so it does make it a lot easier. The drawbacks of using the Union OSS scheme, well, they do have really strict deadlines. So if you are missing deadlines continuously, missing payment deadlines or filing deadlines, you could get expelled from the program. And then that would mean you would have to register for VAT in each country where you have customers. So you wouldn't really have that choice any longer. So keep that in mind. Once you do register, you do want to make sure that you're complying. Another drawback of the Union OSS scheme is that you can't deduct any VAT like you would on your local VAT returns. So for those of you who are currently VAT registered across the EU and you are holding stock and importing stock into a specific EU country and reclaiming your import VAT locally, you're going to have to continue to do that as normal. You deduct any input VAT or import VAT on your local VAT return, and that is not going through the Union OSS scheme. These special schemes are only for remitting and paying over the VAT to the tax authorities. It is not for reclaims or deductions from there. Also, like I mentioned, any local or domestic sales all need to be collected on the domestic VAT return. And the one other thing that's not on the slide as well is the B2B transactions. They're all going on that local VAT return as well. So keep that in mind, that is not under the Union OSS scheme. So going on to the import one-stop shop scheme, which I think is going to be really beneficial for a lot of businesses. Now, again, it is an optional scheme, and I'll give you the alternatives in a moment as well. So this is an optional scheme going live from the 1st of July. And again, each EU member state will have their own IOS portals and where you can register for the IOS schemes. And it's going to be there to report VAT due on the distant sales of imported goods. So any imported goods with a consignment value of less than 150 euros. So keep that in mind, that there is that that kind of threshold there for those consignments. So if your products verge on the edge of that 150 euros consignment, keep that in mind when you're setting your prices, or trying to ship or enter into specific EU countries. And it's going to be used by EU sellers, non-EU sellers, and online marketplaces to collect the VAT, do importation from the customers in a single EU interface. So looking at how it works in practice, you're going to get registered onto the IOS scheme. Again, if you are an EU business, you'd want to do that in the member state where you are located. If you're a non-EU business, you're going to want to do this with an intermediary that is based in the EU. Once you're registered, you are going to be charging the local rate of VAT on all of these transactions that are with a consignment value of less than 150 euros. So again, on your own website, you're going to want to be making sure that you can add the local rate of VAT at the point of checkout, or calculate that local rate of VAT depending on where your customer is based. Then you are going to get your IOS number, and you are going to put this on each and every one of those consignments going through customs. The customs authorities will then record these imports, and your goods will be released. So you're going to be looking at really fast release through customs when you're importing these goods under IOS, and this is going to be a huge benefit under the scheme. What happens then is you are going to then collect all this VAT, and you're going to remit this on a single monthly IOS return and a single payment to that member state of identification. Again, much like the Union OSS scheme, you're going to pay it to that one member state, and they are going to split up the VAT amongst themselves. So it's going to be hopefully quite simple. And hopefully quite a simplification for many businesses. I wanted to touch a little bit further on the intermediaries that are needed. So as a non-EU business, you would need this local EU intermediary. And what's going to happen, it's very similar to a fiscal representative, if you've heard that term before, when getting registered. And what they are going to do, this intermediary is essentially going to be liable for the VAT owed by non-EU businesses using the IOS scheme. So what will happen is that you will actually have to pay the intermediary, and the intermediary will then pay the tax authorities. And if you default on your payments, the intermediary will be liable to pay the VAT on your behalf. So there is extra risk involved in this. You have to keep that in mind for those intermediaries that are going to be helping your business. We've also been getting lots of questions. Do we need to use our EORI numbers when importing these low value goods? So you do not need to continue using your EORI numbers on these low value goods. You'll be using your IOS number instead. You will only need to use your EORI number going into the future on the high value goods, so anything above 150 euros, when acting as the importer of record. And in that case, you may need a VAT registration as well. So looking at these consignments that exceed 150 euros. So what happens with these ones? Well, we're going to be going through what I like to call normal customs procedures. And when I say normal customs procedures, I know it's not been normal since Brexit, but it's going to be essentially what has been happening post transition period with Brexit. It's going to be the exact same thing for those goods. So if you are importing goods with a high value of over 150 euros, duties are going to apply, and import VAT is going to be due upon importing the goods, and in order to clear your goods through customs, essentially. So make sure that you are putting a plan in place for these specific items. Who is going to be acting as the importer of record? This is a really common question I ask a lot of people. Is it going to be your customer who's the importer of record, who will be paying for the import VAT, and duties upon the goods clearing through, or are you going to be the importer of record paying for this on behalf of your clients and customers? And in that case, you may need a VAT registration in those countries. So keep that in mind if you do want to act as the importer of record. So I did mention that IOS was a completely optional scheme, and there are these other options, and the special arrangements are one of them. So the special arrangements are specifically for postal operators, and it's going to be used as that alternative to IOS, the IOS scheme. And it's only going to cover, again, those low value consignments of less than 150 euros. And it's going to really, it's designed to move the collection from the seller to the postal operator. And it's going to be very similar to DAP, how people import under DAP Incoterms. So where the customer is still going to be liable to collect VAT on your behalf, and or at the point of importation, sorry. And once they are paying the goods to clear the goods through customs, then they will be able to get their goods. So there's not a lot of transparency for the customer, as the postal operator may actually charge any handling fees, for example, or extra fees to get to handle the payments of the import VAT. So keep that in mind when using this. The other thing is that not all postal operators are actually using the special arrangement. So if you do want to use the special arrangement, make sure that you are checking with your postal operator that they are actually going to collect this on your behalf. And essentially, instead of you having to fill out the IOS return on a monthly basis, the postal operator is going to be doing that, and they will be collecting the VAT from the customer and then paying that over to the tax authority on everyone's behalf. So that is how it's going to work, and you have to make sure that your postal operator will actually handle that for you. Okay, so moving into the marketplaces, this is the last big change here coming. And I think this is going to be really relevant for a lot of sellers. So there's going to be a new rule for marketplaces where we need to look at each of the transactions on an individual transactional level to determine who is going to be liable for the VAT collection. So there's a few different bits of criteria that we look at when determining who is going to be liable for the VAT collection. Is it going to be the marketplace, or is it going to be the seller? So first of all, we have the value of the goods when imported. So is it going to be above 150 euros or below 150 euros? The location of the goods at the point of sale. So are they coming from outside the EU, or are they coming from within the EU? And they're also going to be looking at the country of establishment of the seller. So is the seller based within the EU, or are they based outside of the EU? And looking at the combination of this, that is how we will figure out who is going to be liable for the VAT. So this is going to be the most important slide if you are selling on a marketplace, and I think it's going to be really relevant for these sellers, because marketplaces are going to be taking on a lot of the responsibility for non-EU businesses. So let's go into it here. So the first one, marketplaces are going to be considered the deemed supplier and therefore collecting the VAT on your behalf for any B2C sales of goods imported into the EU where the value of the consignment does not exceed 150 euros. So essentially, the marketplaces are going to be having their own IOS scheme. And if you are selling on a marketplace, importing goods directly to private customers, the marketplace is going to be considered the deemed supplier, and you are going to use the marketplace's IOS number on your import documents. So Amazon, eBay, they will all be providing you the IOS number to attach to your specific consignments or parcels for those products going in, and you will use those IOS numbers to clear the goods through customs. The second type of transaction where the marketplaces are going to be the deemed supplier is going to be for the B2C supply of goods within the EU by a non-EU seller. So this means if you're a UK-based business and you're holding stock within an EU warehouse selling to EU customers, the marketplaces are going to be responsible for the VAT collection and remittance to the tax authorities on your behalf for all of these transactions, irrespective of the value of the goods. So that's a big one for a lot of sellers right now. Because marketplaces have never done this before. Now, if you're an EU-based business, the marketplace is not taking on that responsibility for you. So you would still have to collect the VAT on your own behalf. The marketplace will not be collecting this. This is only for non-EU businesses. So please keep this in mind. And also, if the goods are coming in to the EU or a transaction takes place where the seller is VAT liable, you need to make sure that you are recording this on either your local VAT return, or under well, it would just be your local VAT return. So that's it. You'd have to make sure you're VAT registered. Also, with the marketplace becoming liable for the VAT, it doesn't mean that you have completely lost, or it doesn't mean that you don't need a local VAT registration anymore. So if you're holding stock within an EU country, you still need the local VAT registrations. So in countries, if you're using the Pan-EU Fulfillment Center, you still need all of those local VAT registrations, and those are going to cover, one, the B2B transactions made through a marketplace. The second thing it's going to cover is the import VAT reclaims, or the input VAT reclaims. If you are making any purchases and you want the VAT deducted, that's all going to go through that local VAT return. And the third thing is the actual sale to the marketplace. So even though the marketplace is going to be actually collecting the VAT from the customer and paying that over to the tax authorities, you as the seller are going to be making an exemptive VAT supply to the marketplace. And that needs to be recorded on your local VAT return. So keep that in mind as well. You need to keep those local registrations in place, even though Amazon might be collecting all the VAT on your behalf. One last thing I wanted to touch on this slide is the consignment value. And I get asked a lot, what is considered the consignment? What's included in this consignment? So the consignment value is the definition given by the European Commission is listed below. So the goods packed together and dispatched simultaneously by the same supplier to the same consignee and covered by the same transport contract. So keep that in mind. And also when you're calculating the consignment value, it's based on the intrinsic value, which means it is excluding any VAT, any shipping, and any insurance costs as well. So keep that in mind. The 150 euros is really the price of the goods, excluding all of those extra kind of line items separated out at the point of sale. So the consequences of not registering on the new schemes. So if you don't register on time or at all, you won't be able to register going backwards past a calendar quarter or calendar month. So depending on the scheme. So what that would mean is that if you wanted to comply going backwards, is that you're going to have to register in each and every country to comply locally. And this means the cost of compliance can be quite a lot, because you would have to be backdating, complying locally, and then you could finally deregister and go on to the new schemes. So keep that in mind. you do want to make sure if you're selling on your own website or the marketplace isn't going to be covering your transactions, that you are complying right away. And where can we help? Well, we can help with the union and non-union registrations, the IOS registrations. We do act as an intermediary for businesses, and then also any consultancy or VAT rate review as well. We can assist with, and just let Joe or Stefan know, or you can come to us directly and let us know that you heard of us through e-commerce accountants. And I wanted to make it extra sweet as well and throw in an extra discount for the rest of June now. So £75 off the registration and the 75% off the first month compliance. And for those of you who are looking for consultancy going, maybe have had loads of trouble since Brexit, there are also consultancy grants available for VAT and customs that the EU have made available, or sorry, not the EU. We're out of the EU. The government has made it available. So I can send this out to Joe and Stefan to send out to everyone. So you can use the grant if you need help with customs or VAT, and you might want to find out VAT rates or help sorting out your supply chain, whatever it might be. We can help with that sort of thing, and you can get a grant for up to £2,000 for it. And that's all I have. So I will stop rambling and I'll bring Joe back on. So thanks so much for listening. And I can see a few questions are coming through. So if you want to ask more questions, happy to answer.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex. I feel like you're going to need a glass of water or something after that. That was a lot of information to go through. And as a reminder for everyone, before we start going into the questions, we are going to be sending out a recording of this tomorrow. So if you want to pause it or rewind, there's a lot of kind of information there to digest. And yes, we'll be sending that out tomorrow. In terms of questions, Alex, I know you've got quite a few that we kind of preloaded, and a few people have been asking some there. Would you be able to, before we do those, would you be able to, I suppose, give a rough overview for how these sort of changes will impact the two biggest kind of groups of our clients? So we've got a lot of Amazon sellers who store their goods in the UK or in the EU. And we also work with lots of drop shippers who might store their goods outside the EU, usually say in China, and then they send them directly to consumers. Would you be able to, I suppose, explain how the changes will impact those guys?
Yeah, of course. So in that first scenario, if you're a UK-based business, maybe holding goods in the UK, for example, and you're selling through Amazon, well, if you're selling those low-value goods, and your consignments are typically under 150 euros, there's nothing you need to really do to prepare, just selling on Amazon. Amazon will give you the IOS number, and you just need to make sure that those IOS numbers are going on all of those imported goods into the EU. So keep that in mind. Again, if you're selling through eBay as well, they'll give you their own separate IOS number. These IOS numbers need to be kept separately for each of these transactions. So that's quite simple for those types of businesses. If, say, you're a UK business holding stock in the EU, for example, you still need those local registrations. So if you haven't been registered, make sure you're getting registered right away. If you're selling through only marketplaces, then again, you just need that local registration, and the marketplace is going to be taking on the transactions for you, the B2C transactions, and then anything that you are kind of recording locally, any the B2B transactions, the import VAT reclaims, and the exempt of VAT sales to the marketplace, that's all going to go on your local VAT return. So in terms of registering, you don't need to register for anything else. So yeah, that's quite a sweet deal for those types of businesses. If you do have your own website, though, you do need to make sure that you are getting registered for the IOS if you're making imports into the EU through your own website, or the Union OSS, selling cross-border through your own website with your goods already stored in the EU. So marketplace sellers, you guys are probably just chilling. And then for the on website sellers, you will have to take action. And again, looking at the ones, say, drop shipping from outside, maybe from China going into the EU, it depends on where you're drop shipping on. Again, if it's from a marketplace and the consignment is less than 150 euros, you don't need to do anything, and the marketplace is going to be responsible for the VAT. The only thing you need to do is use that IOS number. If you're selling through your own website, maybe you have a Shopify website that's powering all your drop shipping, you're going to need to either get IOS registered, use special arrangements for postal operators. And there's actually a third option that I didn't mention because it's probably not so sweet either, is actually getting VAT registered in each country where your customers are. And that's why I left it out, because it's not as easy as, say, the IOS one. But if you have maybe customers only in one EU country, then maybe that might be a good option for your business. So if you're a drop shipper, you might have those extra steps that you need to take as well.
And so for those drop shippers, how does the process look for them if they do work with you guys for their EU VAT? How does it look?
So if you are, say, registering for the IOS scheme, what happens, so we can, as an intermediary, we've been getting the IOS numbers within about 48 hours. So they've been coming really, really quickly from the Irish tax authorities, which is fantastic. So then you guys will be ready to go from the 1st of July. You would then want to be charging the local rate of VAT at the point of sale. So make sure that your website has that facility to charge the local rate of VAT. And then what will happen is, on a monthly basis, if, say, maybe you're selling through Shopify, we'll connect an API so we can pull all of your transactional data. We will file a report and then give you an amount on how much to pay to ourselves, because we're acting as the intermediary. So you would then make a payment to ourselves. We would submit the VAT return and pay the VAT to the Irish tax authorities on your behalf, and send you a payment confirmation so you know that it's being paid for your company. And that is essentially it. And you do that over and over on a monthly basis until you wish to deregister on the IOS scheme.
Fantastic, thank you. I think Butler and Grace raised quite a good question there. They're asking about essentially what is a marketplace, because I think the definition really has been given by the EU directive, hasn't it? Would you mind answering that for them?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. The European Commission, like you said, have given a definition, and it's multiple, it's about 20 pages long, of what the definition, and they call it an electronic interface rather than a marketplace, which makes it a lot more broad and a bit more confusing for the likes of you and me, because, yeah, different marketplaces can actually or electronic interfaces can ultimately decide. Now, they've tried to keep it broad to make sure that they're encompassing the likes of Amazon and eBay and these big marketplaces, but they may have swept other types of platforms in as well. So we know Amazon and eBay are definitely considered electronic interfaces under these new rules, and Etsy will. I think I've seen Etsy also is considering themselves as an electronic interface and will be collecting the VAT on their behalf. But for the likes of, say, Shopify have said that they are not considering themselves an electronic interface, and therefore sellers are having to collect VAT on their own accord. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, for ourselves directly, we don't have a running list of every single marketplace that is considering themselves a marketplace. So the best thing to do is to actually reach out to the marketplaces for support and see if they put out any communication around this, because they should be putting out communication about how they're handling the transactions. And if they're not going to be considering themselves as a marketplace or an electronic interface, then you will have to collect the VAT on your local transactions and reports.
That was a great answer. Thanks, Alex. And J Lau, I think it was like 437, asked an interesting question. What if my UK business does both of these? So they're holding UK stock and also drop shipping from China. And I think possibly what they might mean is that they're drop shipping to the EU, because the changes we're talking about today are to do with the EU side of things. How would that impact them if they were doing that?
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter for this case, because you're holding stock in the UK and you're also holding stock in China. Both right now are considered third countries, and therefore don't need they're considered outside the EU, and therefore everything being imported in would be considered under the IOS scheme or the special arrangements. You wouldn't really have to worry about those ones. That they're all considered under the same thing. So again, if you're selling on a marketplace, the marketplace is going to be responsible. If you're selling through your own website, the IOS scheme could cover both of these types of sales coming from China or the UK. The European Commission won't really look and see where the goods are coming from, as long as it's coming from outside the EU. That's all that matters. But yeah, great question.
Thanks, Alex. And I think this one you covered earlier in the presentation, but I suppose just to reiterate it from Aspirify, if the marketplace will collect the VAT, do we actually need to submit any VAT returns? And how will the purchase VAT then be reclaimed?
So yes, if the marketplace is going to collect the VAT, it depends on where your goods are coming from. So if they're all imported goods and the marketplace is covering this, you don't have any VAT returns to submit in the EU. Joe's still going to handle your UK VAT returns. You still need to do that. If your goods are coming from in the EU, then you would need to keep that local VAT registration, and you're still going to have to record and report on these local VAT returns. And that's exactly how your purchases would be reclaimed. So say you are manufacturing in Spain and then shipping your goods straight from Spain, you can actually keep that local Spanish registration, reclaim your purchase VAT from the Spanish manufacturer on your local Spanish return, and then sell from there. And all of your VAT that you collect from your Spanish return will be or from your sales from the Spanish manufacturer will be recorded on the local VAT return. So hopefully that helps and clarifies it.
Thanks, Alex. And the one just below that there from Rodrigo is probably a very easy one to answer.
Yes, of course. We can help Dutch companies with the VAT returns through us. Yeah. The big thing with the Netherlands is that we would just we'd be able to do it for you. We just need and I butcher this word every time I say it because I can't speak any Dutch, but the e-herkenning number. We would need that number from your Dutch business in order to get into the Dutch portal, but then we can absolutely do that on your behalf, or we can do the preparation only, and you guys can submit it yourself as well through the Dutch portal if you didn't want to provide the e-herkenning number. So yeah.
And for those businesses like Rodrigo's there that are based in the EU already, if they're drop shipping from China to their home country, would the IOS or OS still be relevant for them, or should they just be submitting those on their, in this case, their Dutch VAT return?
It's up to you, again, on how you want to do it. So if you're only importing into the Netherlands, for example, and that's the only place where your customers are, then maybe you just want to record everything on your local Dutch return because that might be easy for your business. The alternative would be, say, if you are selling all across the EU, it would be easier to record this on the IOS scheme. So once you're registered onto the schemes, you need to make sure you can't really pick and choose which ones go on which under which scheme. So make sure that you are making it really clear when you do, or when you're setting up your shipping policies, or however you are importing in, that you are deciding, is it just your Dutch number, or is it going to be your IOS number that you're going to be using for those specific transactions in countries.
Cheers, Alex. And Bacon Time Club raised the question about establishing the different VAT rates for different products for each different country. I think that she might mean that, you know, if you've got zero rated products, for example, in the UK, how would she know which are zero rated or not? Does that impact in this sort of situation if you're sending goods from outside the EU, or is everything a flat rate?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, because I think a lot of businesses who might have, reduced rates or zero rates here in the UK are going to be the ones that are impacted across the EU. And unfortunately, the EU don't apply rules consistently across the board. Each individual country would have their own VAT rates for specific items. So in this case, if you do have those specific low value goods, you would have to, and you wanted to use, say, a reduced rate and benefit from that, you would have to go through each individual tax authority to figure out these sorts of VAT rates for those items. And that's exactly kind of why I wanted to post the consultancy, the extra consultancy grant that's available to businesses, because you don't want to be sitting through the Polish tax authority's website trying to read Polish and try to get the VAT right for your specific item. So it is important to make sure that you are charging the right VAT rate. The alternative is that you just apply everything at standard, and that's like the worst case scenario. But otherwise, if you want to benefit from the reduced rates, then you would have to look into each individual item for each individual country, and then go from there. So it is a lot more complex in that case for those specific items that are reduced rated.
And I guess to just be clear with that, if someone's working with you, you'll be able to direct them towards that grant, and then that grant is used to kind of pay for your team to kind of do the research and look into these kind of specific cases.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's essentially a free service for you to get help on this, and so that you don't have to pay for it. So, yeah.
Thanks, Alex. And another general one from Aspirify, which probably applies to a lot of people. Which scheme would I need to register for if I was selling on Shopify and also marketplaces?
Yep, good question. So, again, the marketplace will be taking on, if you're a non-EU business, the marketplace will be taking on a lot of your transactions for you. So you'd only need to VAT register in an EU country where you're holding stock for the marketplace transactions if you're non-EU. For Shopify, if, say, you were holding stock in an EU country and selling cross-border to private individuals across the EU, you'd want to use the Union OSS scheme to declare this, or alternatively VAT register in each country where your customers are based. So the Union OSS scheme would be the most easy, simplified version for your or report for your business to declare those cross-border sales. If you're selling on Shopify and importing your goods into the EU with a low value, less than 150 euros, then you would also want to register for IOS. And it's important to note that businesses can have multiple registrations. So you could have the IOS scheme, you could have the Union OSS scheme, you could have a local VAT registration, you could have all these things happening at once. Just having one doesn't mean you can't have another. So if you're selling digital downloads and physical goods and importing goods, then you could have the non-union, the union, and the IOS scheme all under your own VAT group. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Thanks, Alex. And so we've only got a few minutes left. So just as a reminder for everyone, some of the specific questions that we've got here and that you've already sent through, Alex and her team are going to be reviewing them, and we'll be kind of emailing out to you directly. Have we got time for a couple more, Alex, now? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Karen asked about, she said that she makes only a handful of sales into the EU. Talking about the cost estimates, I'm guessing that is the cost estimates from simply VAT. Would you mind kind of giving her a bit of an overview there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to actually be transparent about this, because, it might not be right for all businesses as well. And you might need to look at different things like the special arrangements, for example. So for the fees for the IOS, this is just for simply VAT. So we have the registration fee, which is a one-off fee of £345, plus you get a £75 discount if you say you come from e-commerce accountant. So that's great. And then from there, the monthly filing filing fee and payment fee. So it's all under one for payments and filings, and it's £175. And then on top of this, there's no other fees on top of it, but we do require a deposit. And this is because if you were to default on your VAT payments, Simply VAT would be liable for the VAT, and therefore, to cover our risk, we are requiring a deposit. And this is calculated on your sales that you've done over the last few months. And then it would typically be on a 2-monthly average VAT liability, and that's how much we'd request as a deposit. And we wouldn't use it unless you defaulted on a payment, and that's where we take it out. Otherwise, it's all refundable once you leave the scheme. So I think that's important to be transparent about that. We do want to make sure, we want to work with our customers, but we also need to make sure that we aren't left handling the bill on your behalf.
Yeah, it's quite a huge risk that you guys have there, really. And I'd just like to say, at e-commerce accountants, we've worked with several different kind of VAT specialist houses. However, we've consistently had such good feedback with Simply VAT, and we have such a good experience working with them, which is why we're kind of here today recommending them. Those of you that are cost sensitive, I've not compared their prices recently, but I'd say that the kind of level of support and the knowledge that they have, it's well worth kind of paying for that kind of assurance. Hopefully you've seen today the number of questions that Alex has been able to just rattle off. I think it shows. One other group of people that kind of Karen's made me think of there as well is the print-on-demand businesses. So if somebody places, like they've got customers that are all around the world, but the printers are actually based in European countries, would they need to register for any of these schemes?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because a lot of print-on-demand businesses don't realize that they're incurring a VAT liability. So what essentially happens when you are using a print-on-demand manufacturer, for example, you are, say a customer places an order with you, and then you place an order with the manufacturer. What happens is the manufacturer then ships directly to the customer on your behalf. So what you've done is, because you've purchased the goods from that EU country, you've created and then they're shipped from that EU country, you've created a taxable supply in that EU country because the goods are being shipped from there. So you do need a local VAT registration in that country, but you can also then reclaim any taxes on that. And then you would also want your Union OSS registration as well. Say if this the print-on-demand business, like Printful, for example, I know they have a manufacturer in Latvia. So you'd get registered in Latvia, and then use a Union OSS, for example, through your own website to then sell it across the EU. So that would hopefully be the most beneficial option for businesses.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Alex. I think that's probably a good time to call it. Is there anything else major? I know you've just gone through quite a lot. So is anything else you think that's worth covering?
I don't think so. I think at the moment, obviously, these rules are very, very, there's so much to take in, and I hope I didn't leave you overwhelmed, but Joe's going to be sending out an ebook tomorrow morning, which simplifies or reiterates the rules that we talked about today, that will hopefully help everyone. And I think the most important thing is to just ask questions and make sure that you're educated enough to implement and be prepared for the changes. And I think that's the key thing to take away, is really just preparation is key.
Thanks, Alex. And as a reminder, if people want to get in touch with you guys, there should be buttons below everywhere. Is that how it's been set up? We can't see it on our side.
In the description, yeah. Joe's practicing being a YouTube vlogger. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, then. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alex, and thank you for all the information. As Alex said, we're going to be sending out an ebook tomorrow and also the recording. If anybody's got any other questions, click the various buttons below and send us an email, and we will all get back to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Alex. Speak soon.